Please excuse us, my mother-in-law said. My daughter is a med student, and her studies keep her very busy. On the day of the engagement party, there was an empty seat on my husband's side. Both my mother-in-law and father-in-law noticed my gaze and approached, looking quite apologetic. I told her she needed to be here, my husband Kenneth said, expressing his frustration with his sister and apologizing to my family. We smiled and reassured them, saying, "Don't worry about it." Seeing our understanding, my mother-in-law added, "We hope you'll get along well with our daughter too." I nodded, "Yes, of course." At that moment, I didn't think too much of it. Since my in-laws and Kenneth had left a good impression, I assumed his sister would be the same. My name is Holly, and I'm 33 years old. Kenneth and I registered our marriage 2 months ago and are planning to have our wedding ceremony next year. Around the time of our engagement party, my mother fell ill and was hospitalized. I wanted to wait until she fully recovered so she could see me in the wedding dress she had always dreamed of. In the meantime, I decided to embrace my role as a housewife. Before getting married, I worked as a doctor in a hospital. However, the demanding nature of the job took a toll on my mental and physical health, affecting both my work and personal life. Although I couldn't leave my patients immediately, I eventually resigned from the hospital on the advice of others. Perhaps a large hospital wasn't the right fit for me. During a period when I felt inadequate and embarrassed about my career, I met and married Kenneth. Raised in an ordinary family, he was surprised to learn I was a former doctor but saw me for who I was beyond my profession. "I'll work hard to keep you smiling," he would say, heading to work diligently every day. For him, I dedicated myself to cooking and housework. Thanks to Kenneth, I can now live my life with a smile. As my health gradually improved, I began considering re-entering the workforce using my medical license. However, amidst our happy life, one thing concerned me: my sister-in-law, whom I had never met. According to my in-laws, she's a busy med student. We were supposed to meet at the engagement party, but she couldn't attend due to her studies. Having passed her exams on the first try, she must be quite capable. Since Kenneth and I registered our marriage around the same time as the party, we missed the chance to meet her. I hoped we could eventually greet each other. One day, Kenneth and I went out to the city. We enjoyed looking at furniture and matching dinnerware together. As we were thinking of taking a break, a voice called out, "Isn't that Kenneth?" Kenneth turned around, and I followed his gaze. A flashy young woman stood there, dressed in a low-cut dress and high-heeled pumps with a strong perfume scent. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" Kenneth asked. The woman named Rachel scrutinized me, making me feel uncomfortable. Kenneth introduced her to me. "Holly, this is your first time meeting her, right? This is my sister, Rachel. So this is her." "Nice to meet you, I'm Holly," I said, politely greeting my sister-in-law. She was different from what I had imagined, but I reminded myself not to judge people by their appearance. As I reflected on this, Rachel laughed mockingly. "Oh, so you're already married. Wow, Kenneth, you're handsome and have a high income, but you married such a plain woman. That's just weird." I was taken aback by her blatantly rude comment on our first meeting. It was true that Kenneth, 4 years younger than me, was good-looking and worked for a major pharmaceutical company, earning an above-average income. While strangers might think we were mismatched, I couldn't understand how she could say such things to my face. Sensing the tension, Kenneth stepped forward to defend me and scolded Rachel. "Hey, don't say such rude things. You should properly greet her, especially since you missed the engagement party due to your own convenience." Rachel laughed it off without any concern. "Well, I had a mixer to go to after a long time." Wait, wasn't she supposed to be busy with her studies? Shocked by the reason for her absence, I decided to try and mediate, worried that this could escalate into a heated argument between my husband and his sister. Well, we're meeting today, so that's good, right, Rachel? I look forward to getting along with you." Rachel glared at me. "What do you do anyway?" "I'm going to be a doctor, you know. Don't get too familiar with me." Her aura of "I'm important, I'm special" was overwhelming. I've encountered many people with high pride, but she was exceptional. I tried to calm Kenneth, who was about to yell, and replied, "I'm currently a housewife. I used to be." But Rachel interrupted me before I could finish. "A housewife? That's just like being unemployed. Unemployed people are society's garbage, and now you're my sister-in-law? Seriously? Oh, are you just a parasite living off my brother's money?" I felt my cheeks twitch involuntarily. In Rachel's mind, housewives seemed equivalent to unemployed people, which was an extreme view. My attempt to keep the peace had clearly backfired. Rachel, enough. Holly isn't the kind of person you think, Kenneth said, stepping in to defend me. It's okay, Kenneth, I said, calming him down. Even though our interaction was brief, I felt I understood what kind of person Rachel was. She must be intelligent, having passed her exams on the first try and keeping up with her credits, but her personality left much to be desired. Being a doctor is a wonderful profession indeed. It's a tough journey, but good luck with it, I said, smiling warmly. Ah, what do you know? I don't need your fake advice. Oh, and by the way, I'm still a student, so I'll pass on giving a wedding gift, thanks. My husband seemed too tired to get angry anymore. Just go, he said, gesturing as if shooing away an animal. Rachel complained in response. I came to say hi, but what a bad attitude. Well, whatever, I'm busy too, she said, before turning and walking away. After Rachel disappeared from sight, Kenneth deeply apologized to me. I'm really sorry about my sister. I can't believe she said all those rude things. She used to be more reasonable, I said, shaking my head. It's okay. Honestly, my impression of Rachel was nearly the worst, but it's better than having a fight because of me. We managed to exchange greetings, and from now on, I just need to keep my distance. Thank you for defending me so many times. You know what? Let's change our mood and have some coffee. I'm craving some delicious coffee. I smiled and Kenneth nodded, looking relieved. A few days later, I visited a large hospital nearby, carrying a tote bag with flowers and a change of clothes. I reached for the door of a private room. Mom, it's Holly. How are you feeling? I called as I opened the door. My mother smiled happily from her bed. I regularly visited her to help with her clothes and personal care. Today, she seemed to be in pretty good spirits. In place of my mother, my brother Andrew, removing his stethoscope, answered. He works as a doctor at this hospital and keeps a close eye on our mother's condition. Seeing his familiar face always brings a smile to mine. It's been a while, Andrew, he said, smiling as he continued to record our mother's progress. I set down my tote bag and took a seat on the round chair beside her bed. Dad was here a moment ago, but he left for a conference. Bad timing. It would have been nice if the whole family could have been together. What a pity, my mother chuckled. This hospital is actually run by my father. I used to work here as a doctor just like him and Andrew. It feels strange being here, a place that's both my family home and former workplace. After enjoying a chat, my mother, feeling sleepy from her medication, said, I think the medicine is working. I'm feeling a bit drowsy, and started to drift off. After tucking her in, my brother said, seeing both of us might have comforted her. We smiled at each other and left the room quietly. My brother and I sat down on a couch in the lobby. How are things with Kenneth? Are you two getting along? He asked. I nodded. Yes, we're having a good time every day. He laughed and patted my head. Ever since I was young, he's always been overly concerned about me, and that hasn't changed even after my marriage. Everyone in our family was worried when you left the hospital. Meeting Kenneth was the best thing that happened to you, I think. I've been able to recover because of Kenneth's presence. While we were chatting, a nurse called my brother away. I'll be right back, just wait here for a bit. I nodded and watched him go to attend to a patient. He's usually busy, second only to our father, the director. It's almost miraculous that we had time to chat. I would have been helping out at the hospital just like my dad and brother if things had been different. Feeling slightly gloomy, I sighed. Hey, what's the unemployed Holly doing here? A familiar loud voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up to see my sister-in-law Rachel standing there, looking down at me with a malicious smile. Her emphasis on unemployed irked me, but I maintained a polite smile. Hi, Rachel. I came to visit my mom today. You know we're in a hospital, so it's better to keep your voice down. Feeling uncomfortable at this encounter, I inwardly groaned. Rachel ignored my subtle hint and continued to speak loudly. Wow, your mom's hospitalized. I came here for clinical training today, Rachel said. From her attire, I had somewhat guessed that might be the case. It's not unusual considering she's a med student at a nearby university, but I wish I hadn't run into her. Even so, her appearance is a bit off. I discreetly glanced at Rachel's outfit and couldn't help but feel dismayed. Though not as extreme as the last time we met, her makeup was still flashy and her loosely tied hair was casual. I wondered if she understood the need for a more professional appearance. When I worked as a doctor, I wore makeup too, but I always prioritized cleanliness and kept it subtle to avoid discomforting the patients. Doesn't anyone advise her on this? Glancing around, I noticed several medical students and doctors, many of whom were my former colleagues, looking pale and uneasy behind her. Most of these doctors knew me well, and the medical students, upon being whispered to, seemed to realize that I am the daughter of the hospital director. To them, Rachel must appear as a reckless med student offending the director's daughter, her loud voice disrupting the hospital's decorum. I tried to suggest moving elsewhere. Rachel, please keep your voice down. It's disturbing. Rachel exaggeratedly sighed and interrupted me. A woman like you, unemployed and catching a high-income man like my brother, must be a relief to your mother, right? I bet you're making him pay for your mother's hospital bills, aren't you? Just like a trashy family would. She smirked, making it seem like I was some sort of embarrassment in front of everyone. Her awful words shocked not only the nearby doctors and medical students but also the passing patients who frowned. Being publicly called unemployed and having my innocent mother insulted was too much for me. Hey, enough is enough. One of the doctors, unable to stand it any longer, stepped in to stop Rachel. But she wouldn't listen. She deserves to be spoken to like this. Rachel laughed. The doctor who intervened furrowed his brow at Rachel's remark and left, muttering, "Your life is over, kid." Rachel seemed clueless about what that meant. Then my brother Andrew, who had finished his work, came back. Seeing the tension between Rachel and me and sensing the strange atmosphere, he looked puzzled. "Ah, Andrew." Rachel's attitude changed drastically with Andrew's arrival, and I was taken aback. She was the epitome of putting on a facade. She changed her tone and started cozying up to my brother. I couldn't help but notice that even her facial expression seemed to alter. Andrew is young, talented, and handsome, even from a sister's biased view. Being the successor to her father, he's quite popular. I instantly realized that Rachel was aiming for him. "Holly, what's going on?" Andrew asked, addressing me by name, to which Rachel glared at me. "Andrew, are you close with her?" she asked, her tone dripping with disdain. Calling the doctor at her training site by his first name was appalling. Andrew distanced himself from Rachel and casually replied, "Well, yes." Rachel, apparently unhappy with his response, persisted annoyingly. "But she's married, you know. You weren't aware of that, right? Andrew, you're popular. You should be careful." Her sugary nasal voice was irritating. She seemed to mistake me for a rival aiming for Andrew. "I know. She's my sister, after all." At Andrew's words, Rachel froze. "What? What?" I struggled to contain my laughter at Rachel's stunned expression. While Rachel stood there dumbfounded, the medical student who had intervened earlier whispered in Andrew's ear, likely explaining the whole situation. Andrew's expression turned stern in an instant. "Wait, so Holly is the daughter of the director of this hospital?" As Rachel looked confused, I nodded. "Yes, I'm his daughter. I originally worked here as a doctor. I had to quit due to health issues. Now I'm recovering and temporarily putting my efforts into being a housewife." Rachel turned pale at my words. I had heard from Kenneth that she was hoping to get a job at this hospital. She must realize now that after insulting my mother and me, and with my brother hearing it, her chances of employment here are bleak, and so are her dreams of marrying into wealth. I glanced at Andrew's profile and smiled inwardly. "She's unbelievable as a person," Andrew muttered quietly. It seemed he never had any interest in Rachel in the first place. "Rachel seems to be quite excellent as a medical student," I continued. At my words, Rachel visibly flinched. To easily label people as social garbage or belittle them, that's a problem not just as a doctor, but as a human being. Unless you realize what that problem is, you're not qualified to be a doctor. Reflect on that. The people around nodded in agreement with my admonishing tone. Lectured by me, whom she had mocked, and disappointed by Andrew, whom she admired, it must have been a series of embarrassments for her. However, I didn't want her to become a doctor as she was. Doctors not only bear responsibility for lives but also need to empathize with people's hearts, I believe. "Ha! I don't get it," Rachel muttered, feeling uncomfortable with the atmosphere. She turned and hurried away. "Don't run in the hospital," scolded a passing nurse. Startled, Rachel took a spectacular fall. Andrew and I exchanged glances and laughed, resigned to the absurdity of the situation. Half a year passed. Rachel, already known for her bad character, became completely isolated after ridiculing me in the hospital. Her pride led her to heavy drinking, which resulted in a severe injury and hospitalization. Ironically, she was now being cared for by the very doctors she aspired to join. Finally, understanding her own arrogance, she expressed regret and a desire to apologize to me, as I heard from my in-laws. She decided to take a break from medical school and planned to start afresh after her discharge, but it would be a thorny path for her. Meanwhile, I secured a new job as a medical doctor at a pharmaceutical company. My role involves researching and developing medications as well as verifying the safety of new drugs. My father and brother asked if I would return to the hospital, but I wanted to try something new. My mother's health improved enough for home care, and she's looking forward to attending